Zena stood in the kitchen, carefully stirring the stew as the warm aroma filled the house. The table was set beautifully, white candles flickered beside fresh flowers, and soft music played in the background. She had worn her favorite gold earrings, the ones Baraka once said made her look like a queen. Tonight was their 5th wedding anniversary, and despite all the recent coldness between them, she still wanted to believe in their love. She heard the front door open and turned with a hopeful smile, but her heart stopped. Baraka walked in, not with flowers, but with another woman on his arm. "This is Tano," he said with a smug grin. "She'll be staying with us for a while. You'll get used to her." Zena's hands trembled, but she held her breath and smiled faintly. Tano looked around the house like it was hers already, her heels clicking on the polished floor. Zena didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just nodded. Inside, something broke, but she swallowed the pain, because what Baraka didn't know was that he had just brought his mistress into a house he didn't even own. The real power in that room was standing silently, with the keys in her heart and the deed in her name. Years before Baraka ever entered her life, long before the heartbreak and betrayal, there was a day Zena would never forget. She was just 23 when her Aunt Rua called her to the old family estate in Dembe. The journey from the city was long and dusty, but Zena didn't mind. Aunt Rua was more than just an aunt. She was a second mother, a strong woman who had raised Zena with grace, wisdom, and fire. That day, Aunt Rua sat on the veranda, her hands wrapped around a wooden box. Her voice was soft but carried weight, the kind that made even silence feel sacred. "This house," she said, looking out at the land, "has been in our bloodline for generations. My mother gave it to me, and now I give it to you." Zena's eyes widened. "But why now?" "Because I see the world changing," Aunt Rua whispered, "and I see the kind of woman you're becoming. Gentle, but not weak. Quiet, but not blind. You will need this house one day, not just to live in, but to stand on, to remind a man, or even the world, that your roots run deeper than your wounds." She placed the deed in Zena's hand, wrapped in red cloth, and then said something Zena would carry in her heart forever. "Sometimes snakes must be allowed into the garden, so they can be caught in the sun." Zena didn't fully understand it then. She just nodded and promised to protect the house. "Don't tell anyone," Aunt Rua warned. "Not even the man you marry. Not until the day comes when truth needs to stand taller than love." Zena kept her promise. She moved into the house after her wedding to Baraka and never spoke a word about who really owned it. She let him paint the walls, change the furniture, walk around like the king of the land. She let him believe. She placed the deed in a sealed vault at the family lawyer's office, far away from curious eyes. A copy rested inside her late mother's Bible, hidden in the top drawer of her closet. Every time Baraka joked that he was the man of the house, Zena smiled. Every time his pride pushed her aside, she remembered Aunt Rua's voice. This was not just a home, it was a bloodline, a shield, a quiet crown. And now, as Baraka welcomed another woman into her sacred space, Zena didn't break. She remembered the garden, she remembered the snake, and she knew the sun was finally rising. From the very next morning, Tano moved around the house like it was hers. She didn't ask, she didn't wait, she just acted. She strutted through the living room in loud heels, leaving her perfume trailing behind like a warning. Zena watched from the kitchen as Tano dropped her handbag on the glass table, kicked off her shoes, and called out, "This place could use some color. It's so boring." Zena didn't respond. She just wiped her hands and quietly stepped away. By the 3rd day, Tano had already taken over the master bedroom. Zena returned from the grocery store to find her own clothes, neatly folded dresses, scarves from her late mother, even her wedding gown, dumped into a cardboard box by the door. Tano sat cross-legged on the bed, painting her nails bright red. "Oh, I hope you don't mind," she said, not even looking up. "I need space. This room suits me better." Baraka walked in, grinning like it was all a joke. "Come on, Zena. Stop being dramatic. Let her feel comfortable." Zena stared at him, her heart breaking piece by piece, but she said nothing. No fight, no tears. She simply nodded, picked up the box, and walked to the guest room. Later that night, Tano laughed loudly on the phone, her voice echoing through the hallway. "Can you believe she just let me take over? Like she's the guest, and I'm the wife. Some women really are pathetic." Zena sat in the dark, holding her phone close. Record, save. Every laugh, every insult, every careless word. She started documenting everything. When Baraka handed Tano the gold necklace he had once given Zina on her birthday, she took a photo. When he deleted their wedding pictures from the living room wall, she filmed it. When Tano insulted her cooking, mocked her hair, even called her useless, Zina saved every voice note. But still, she never raised her voice. Even when she heard Tano say one night, "Soon, she'll be out. Then we can redecorate the whole place. This time next month, this house will finally be mine." Zina stood in the hallway, her fingers cold around the doorknob, but her expression calm. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know the storm they were dancing in. Every insult was a nail in the coffin. Every moment of mockery was a step closer to the edge. And Zina, quiet as ever, wasn't breaking. She was building a case, brick by silent brick. One quiet afternoon, while Tano was out shopping and Baraka was at work, Zina slipped out of the house without a word. She didn't take her car, just her handbag and a small brown envelope tucked under her arm. Her heart was heavy, but her face calm. She boarded a taxi and gave the driver an address in the city, a place she hadn't visited in years, her family lawyer's office. Mr. Jaji had known Zina since she was a child. He was Aunt Rua's trusted legal advisor and had handled the property deed when it was passed down to Zina. When he saw her walk in, he stood and gave her a long, fatherly look. "I was wondering when you'd come," he said softly. Zina didn't say much. She just opened the envelope and laid out everything on the table. Copies of the house deed, Aunt Rua's written statement, and a copy of her own will. "I want everything in order," she said. "I don't want shouting or police drama. I want the law to speak when the time is right." Mr. Jaji nodded. He helped her draft eviction papers and quietly updated her will to protect the property from any legal tricks. Everything was signed, stamped, and sealed. The house was legally and completely hers, always had been. Now it was just a matter of timing. Before she left, she turned back and said, "Please keep all of this safe. When I call, be ready." Back at home, Zina didn't confront anyone. Instead, she became quieter, colder, but her eyes missed nothing. She ordered 3 small hidden cameras and installed them in key parts of the house: the living room, the hallway, and the dining area. Small, invisible, and perfectly placed. Tano and Baraka went on living like the house was theirs. They laughed, kissed in front of her, even made jokes about redecorating, but everything was being recorded. Zina kept a log of dates and conversations. She stored every photo and every clip in a private folder labeled Proof. At night, she lay in the guest room staring at the ceiling. Sometimes her chest felt like it would explode with pain, but she would close her eyes and hear Aunt Rua's voice. "Snakes must be allowed into the garden, so they can be caught in the sun." And so, Zina waited, patiently, strategically. She made breakfast, served tea, cleaned quietly. She smiled when Tano insulted her. She nodded when Baraka ignored her. But behind the silence, a storm was forming, one built not on anger, but on truth. Zina wasn't planning revenge, she was preparing justice. And when the time came, Baraka's betrayal didn't come all at once. It came in small, sharp pieces that cut Zina deeper every day. One morning, Zina went to look for her mother's necklace, the delicate gold one with the tiny moon-shaped charm she always kept for special occasions. It was gone. She searched every drawer, every box, but nothing. Later that day, she overheard Tano giggling in the hallway, showing off her new phone to a friend. "The latest one," she boasted. "My baby got it for me. He said I deserve nothing but the best." Zina didn't need to ask. She knew. That necklace, along with a few other pieces of her jewelry, had vanished just days before. It wasn't the gold that broke her. It was the memory attached to each piece. Gifts from her aunt, family heirlooms, moments of love and legacy sold off like they meant nothing. A week later, Zina woke up early to prepare breakfast. She glanced at the calendar. It was her birthday. No messages, no flowers, not even a word from Baraka. He walked past her that morning, barely looking in her direction. His arm wrapped around Tano as they laughed about a trip they were planning. Zina stood in the kitchen, a single candle burning on a cupcake she had bought for herself. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "Happy birthday, Zina," and blew out the flame. Later that evening, she overheard a conversation that nearly made her knees give out. Baraka, standing in the backyard with Tano, his voice clear through the open window. "Just be patient," he told her. "Once I kick Zina out, the house is ours. You can change everything. Paint the walls, break the old stuff, make it yours. She'll be gone soon. I've had enough of her cold silence. Tano laughed and hugged him tightly. I can't wait. This place already feels like mine. Zena stood just behind the curtain, hidden in the shadows. Her heart didn't race. Her hands didn't shake. She was past the stage of pain. What she felt now was something deeper, something quiet but unshakable. Later that night, as Baraka passed her in the hallway, he barely made eye contact, but Zena stopped him gently, her voice calm, her face unreadable. You said you're going to kick me out, she said softly. Baraka looked surprised, maybe even a little uncomfortable. It's not what you think. You've been distant. Things have changed. Zena nodded, smiling faintly. Yes, they have. Then she looked at him, her eyes steady, and said the words he didn't understand, but one day would never forget. Some things, she whispered, you never really owned. She walked away, leaving Baraka staring at her back, confused. He didn't know it yet, but the ground beneath him was already cracking, and the house he thought he controlled. It had never been his to begin with. It was a warm Saturday evening when Zena sent out the invitations. A small family dinner, nothing fancy, just close relatives, good food, and a reason to gather. Baraka's mother, his two sisters, his uncle and aunt all confirmed they'd come. Zena cooked all day, preparing Baraka's favorite dishes, even though he hardly noticed her anymore. The living room was spotless, the table beautifully set, candles glowing gently in the center. On the outside, everything looked perfect. Tano dressed like it was her show, a short red dress, heels too high for comfort, and makeup so bold it made Zena's quiet beauty seem like a whisper. She sat right next to Baraka, laughing too loudly, touching his arm every few minutes as if to mark her territory. No one said anything at first. Some exchanged confused glances, but they stayed polite. Baraka, full of pride, acted like everything was normal. Dinner began, and the awkwardness slowly grew. Tano interrupted conversations, made jokes at Zena's expense, and even fed Baraka a spoon of stew while everyone watched. Zena didn't flinch. She just smiled, offering more food, pouring drinks, her hands steady as stone. Baraka's mother leaned towards Zena at one point and whispered, "Who is this girl?" Zena only smiled again and said, "You'll understand soon." Then, right after dessert, as everyone sipped palm wine and the room filled with soft laughter, Zena stood up. She held her glass in her hand and gently tapped the spoon against it. The sound silenced the room. "To family," she began, her voice calm and warm, "and to guests, especially those who forget they're guests." Tano gave a loud, fake laugh, thinking it was a joke, but Zena didn't smile. She slowly turned her gaze to Baraka, then to everyone in the room. "To visitors in my home," she said clearly, "I hope you've enjoyed what's not yours." The room fell into deep silence. Even the candles seemed to flicker differently. Baraka blinked. "Zena, what are you talking about?" Zena looked around the table, at the eyes full of confusion, at Tano's face slowly shifting from proud to nervous, at Baraka, who still thought he was in control. She didn't answer him. Instead, she reached under the table and pulled out a velvet folder. She laid it gently on the table. "No one likes to be embarrassed in their own home," she said. "So tonight, let's remember whose home this really is." Then she sat back down, her glass still raised. And in that moment, the quiet woman they had all ignored became the loudest voice in the room. The room was so quiet, you could hear the soft clink of a spoon falling into a plate. Baraka looked confused, shifting in his chair. Tano's smile had faded completely. She looked around, waiting for someone to laugh or speak, to break the tension, but no one moved. Zena sat calmly, her fingers resting on the velvet folder in front of her, the same one she had placed gently on the table a few moments earlier. With steady hands, she opened it. Inside was a crisp, official document with a golden stamp and her full name printed in bold. Zena picked it up and laid it flat on the table for all to see. There, in black and white, was the truth, the property deed to the house, signed and sealed years before she ever married Baraka. Baraka leaned forward, his mouth slightly open. What is this?" Zena didn't look at him right away. She spoke slowly, letting every word settle into the silence like thunder. "This house was mine, long before the wedding. My Aunt Rua gave it to me. It's been in my family for generations." She finally looked up, her eyes steady. "You didn't build it. You didn't buy it. You walked in like a king, but you were a guest. Gasps rippled around the table. Baraka's mother covered her mouth, stunned. His sisters exchanged looks of disbelief. The weight of the truth hit like a stone dropped in still water. Baraka stood up, trying to defend himself. Zina, why would you hide this? We're husband and wife. Zina cut him off. And yet, you brought another woman into my home. You mocked me in front of her. You said you'd kick me out of this house, the house that belongs to me. Baraka's face turned pale. He looked like the floor had disappeared beneath him. Tano, who had been sitting stiffly beside him, suddenly found her voice. This is ridiculous. He said this house was his. Zina turned to her, calm but cold. You're trespassing. Tano blinked. What? You're trespassing, Zina repeated. You don't live here. You were never invited and you're not welcome. Tano looked at Baraka, waiting for him to speak, to fight back. But he was frozen, silent, beaten by the truth. Zina reached into the folder again and pulled out another set of papers, copies of the eviction notice. She slid them across the table toward Baraka, without even flinching. No more pretending, she said. You brought shame into my house. Now you can carry it back out with you. There was no shouting, no drama, just truth, quiet, powerful, and undeniable. In that moment, Zina wasn't just a wife anymore. She was the owner. She was the storm they didn't see coming. The next morning, the sun rose over Odogwa with quiet beauty. Birds chirped. The sky was clear, and the neighborhood slowly came to life. But inside Zina's home, the air was thick with tension. She stood on the balcony, dressed in a simple white wrapper and headscarf, holding a cup of warm tea. Her eyes were calm, her back straight, like a queen watching justice arrive. 2 black police vans pulled up at the gate. Baraka was in the living room, pacing. He hadn't slept all night. Tano sat on the couch, arms folded, eyes wide. When the knock came at the door, they both jumped. Baraka opened it, trying to look confident. 2 uniformed officers stood there, holding a file. Mr. Baraka? One of them asked. Yes, he said slowly. You are being served with an official eviction notice. You and the woman known as Tano have 30 minutes to pack your things and leave the premises. This house is legally owned by Mrs. Zina Iza as per the deed and court-filed documentation. Baraka's mouth dropped open. Wait, what? No, this is a mistake. This is my house. I live here. One of the officers opened the file and held up the stamped documents. The name on the deed is not yours. We have the legal right to remove you if necessary. Tano jumped up. This is a setup. That woman is lying. She's just trying to embarrass us. Zina didn't move. She watched from above, her face unreadable. The same woman who had once been mocked, ignored, and pushed aside now stood like stone, unmoved by the chaos below her. Baraka ran to the balcony. Zina, please don't do this. Let's talk. We can fix this. Zina took a slow sip of her tea and replied gently, You should have asked whose name was on the land before planting your shame. Tano started screaming, throwing her shoes into a bag, knocking over furniture. This is nonsense. I'm not going anywhere. One of the officers stepped inside. Miss, you have 15 minutes. If you're not ready by then, we'll remove you ourselves. Baraka, now sweating, turned to the officers. Please, can I just speak to her? She's my wife. She was, Zina said quietly, more to herself than to him. The neighbors had started to gather, peeking through fences and windows, whispering. It wasn't every day that police came to remove a man from a house everyone believed was his. Minutes later, Tano and Baraka were standing outside with bags in hand. No pride, no power, just shame. Zina remained on the balcony, still as a statue. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply turned and walked back inside, into her home. Because some women don't shout to get justice. They prepare, they wait, and when the moment comes, they let the law do the talking. Months passed. The house was peaceful again. No shouting, no cruel laughter echoing through the halls. Just calm. Zina had filled the space with light, fresh curtains, soft music, and the warm scent of home-cooked meals. She moved like a woman who had taken her power back, but not with pride, with quiet strength. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the houses of Odogwa, a knock came at the gate. One of the guards opened it and hesitated before calling for Zina. She walked to the entrance, wiping her hands on a cloth, not expecting what she saw. It was Baraka, but not the Baraka she remembered. This man was thin, tired, his shirt stained and his shoes worn. His once proud shoulders now drooped like a man carrying the weight of his own mistakes. His face was rough with weeks of unshaven regret. "Zina," he said softly, eyes not meeting hers. She didn't speak. She just looked at him, calm, waiting. "I'm not here to fight," he said, voice shaking. "I've lost everything. Tano left. I have nowhere to go. I haven't eaten today. Please, just some food. Just 5 minutes." Zina looked at him for a long time. The man who once kicked her out of her own bedroom. The man who laughed with his mistress while she cried silently in the next room. The man who believed he could erase her with pride and lies. She stepped aside without a word and walked into the kitchen. A few minutes later, she returned with a tray, rice, beans, a piece of fish, and a cup of water. She handed it to him at the door. Baraka took the food with shaking hands. "Thank you," he whispered, almost ashamed to speak. She didn't invite him in. She didn't ask him to sit. She just stood in the doorway, eyes steady, heart guarded. "You didn't just cheat on me," she said finally, her voice soft but sharp. "You spat on my mother's name, on Aunt Rua's legacy, on everything this house stands for." He lowered his head, silent. "This house was built on their bones," she continued, emotion tightening in her throat. "On the sacrifices of women who came before me, women who taught me that silence doesn't mean weakness, that patience doesn't mean surrender." Baraka tried to speak, maybe to ask for another chance, maybe to say sorry, but Zina didn't let him. She stepped back, placed her hand gently on the door, and said one last thing. "I'm not angry anymore, just done." Then she shut the door. Outside, Baraka sat on the steps, alone, eating the food quietly, every bite tasting like memory and regret. Inside, Zina walked back to her kitchen, shoulders straight, heart full of peace. Because some women don't take revenge. They give you what you asked for, and nothing more. Life in the house changed after Baraka was gone. The silence was no longer heavy or sad. It was peaceful. It was healing. For the first time in years, Zina walked through the rooms and felt safe. She opened the windows wide, let the sunlight pour in, and played her aunt's favorite music softly in the background. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a home again. But Zina knew something deeper in her heart, that her story wasn't just her own. She had met too many women in the market, in church, at the clinic, women with silent bruises and tired eyes, women who smiled in public but cried alone at night, women who, like her, had swallowed pain just to keep peace, and she knew she had to do something more than just survive. She had to give others a place to heal too, so she made a decision. Zina took part of the house, the large guest wing, and began transforming it. She painted the walls soft, welcoming colours, bought beds, clean sheets, books, and toys for children. She brought in a counsellor, a nurse, and even a legal advisor. She placed a small sign by the front gate, Mama Rua Haven, in honour of the woman who taught her what strength really looked like. At first, the neighbours were curious, then supportive. Clothes donations came in. Volunteers offered their time. Local businesses brought food, furniture, and funds. Women came quietly at first, some with children in their arms, some with nothing but a plastic bag. And Zina welcomed them all with warmth, not pity. She listened to their stories. She held their hands. She told them what Aunt Rua once told her. Your pain is not your ending, it's just your fire. And fire, when handled right, can light the way. Soon Mama Rua Haven became more than just a shelter. It became a home, a place of laughter, healing, and fresh beginnings. Women started small businesses from there. Children went back to school. Families were rebuilt, not with bricks, but with love. Zina never boasted. She didn't post about it. She didn't ask for applause. She just showed up every day, steady and kind, doing the work, quietly, but powerfully. One evening, she stood at the front gate, watching the sun go down, a little girl running around in the yard behind her. The wind blew gently, lifting the edge of her dress. She closed her eyes and smiled, deep, peaceful, full. A voice, soft like a narrator, seemed to carry on the breeze. Some women burn silently, but when they rise, they don't scream. They sign papers, and they own everything. And with that, the screen fades on her quiet strength, her full heart, and her gentle, unforgettable smile.